Oh, lots of lovely participants turned up. Fantastic. Welcome. Nearly time to start. Hope you're having a great week. If you're in Sydney, hope you're not freezing too much. Lovely bright blue skies. Cool. Could you just type in if you can see the presentation and whether or not the chat box is over the top of the presentation and you can't see it properly? If so, I'll change the settings. Just give us a bit of an idea of how it looks on the other side, as it were. Thank you, Joe, and hello. Haven't seen you for ages. I'm going to give it a go at just sharing the screen and see if that is better. Yes, hello. Good. Let me just see if I can, because I get a chance to share the screen or to share the presentation, and I'm trying to get it so that you're not having to see the screen. The chat box as well, because it's going to interfere with some of the slides. So just a minute, I'm just going to fiddle around with it a bit and see if I can instead share the desktop. Does that make it any better? Let's try that. And then do this. Does that still do that with the chat box on the top? I'm kind of presuming it does because it's share the screen. But if you guys can just let me know. It's the same, all right. Okay, thank you so much for that then. Let's try to get it so that I can see the chat box, but it doesn't interfere with the presentation. And however many times I've tried this, it's been about 3 or 4 times now, and I still can't work out how to do that. It must be blindingly obvious, but I can't see it. So I wonder if I can make the chat box this one. No, I can't do that either. All right. We might give it a go a different way. But then we might go to transitions. Oh. Oh, you can. Thank you, Chris. You can move the chat box at your end to ensure it doesn't interfere with the slides. Fabulous. Okay, do that then. That is the best plan. All right. So, going back a bit. Right. That's, oh, numbers going up. Right. It's probably time to begin in a minute. Give a bit of music. Moving on up. Give people 1 or 2 more minutes. And then make a start. Thanks for that feedback, guys. Thanks, Joe. That's helpful too. Cool. Oh, pouring through the door, which is lovely. Great. Good. Good. All right, let's make a little bit of a start then. So if you're here to learn a bit more about positioning your progress, particularly as a department, but also as a, you know, maybe as a company, this is mainly about departments, but there's a lot to learn about companies too, then you're in the right place, because that's what we're going to be doing today. Do type questions into the chat box. There is a bit of a delay, but I'll keep my eye on it. If you're watching this and you want to get rid of your chat box, you can, or if you want to move it to the side, you can, so that it doesn't interfere with anything. Do type in comments. Let's try and make this interactive. That would be fantastic. Okay, cool. So I'll just make a start then. So It's 1980, and this is Pitman's College. It's a secretarial college in Russell Square in London. They're no longer there, but they were operating out of that business building at the time. Now, the reason I've got that here is that back in those days, which seems an awful long time ago, and before some of you were born, I know, shamefully on my part, this was the place where my father sent me to learn shorthand and typing and secretarial skills. Now, I was going to university anyway to do psychology, but as far as he was concerned, I mean, no one in his family had been educated past 14, really, and even then probably pretty badly. So he was a bit concerned about university, and so he wanted to make sure that as far as he was concerned, I would have a job for life. So he said to me that I want you to go and learn typing. And if you can type, you will always have a job and you will always be able to marry for love, which is a wonderful thing to say, a wonderful intent. Clearly the world changed beyond his expectations, as it does for all of us. But it just goes to show that things change and that we need to evolve with them. So yes, I did learn to touch type. I never really mastered shorthand. Far too complicated for me and need to be manually dexterous, which I'm definitely not. But the typing's come in handy for the book that's just got come back from the editors. So I'm very excited about that. But yeah, so some skills definitely useful. But in terms of being a typist or a secretary, these jobs no longer exist, as we know. So let's have a little look at some of the things that evolve in business. Now, business evolves constantly. Obviously, this is not news. The world evolves, business evolves, and we need to evolve with it. And let's just think about not just the manufacturers of video cassettes, but also, companies like Sony would have been dealing with them, and the various departments that were required in these companies. So, what do we think happened to those people and those departments? How did they evolve? They couldn't have carried on doing what they were doing. They had to evolve to do something else. So yeah, it was very important for them. Now, those of you involved in the research industry or had some sort of contact with it will probably remember, especially the older ones, where when you used to say at a party, if you ever dared, that you were a researcher, people would assume that you stop people in the street with a clipboard. Now, clearly, this doesn't happen, or doesn't happen very often now. And if you are stopped, it's usually to see if you want to sign up to contribute to a charity. But in terms of research, this has clearly changed too. So the departments that helped them get the surveys out and the people who were prepared and trained to stand in the street, these people have changed what they do. They've changed how they do it. They've changed who they do it for. This is a bit of a, this is me in 1989. I think this is probably from the 40s or something. This is, for those of you who don't know what this is a typing pool. So if you were an executive, there's no way whatsoever you would ever lay your hands on a typewriter. So yeah, absolutely terrible things. It showed you had lack of status. So you did your usual scrawl and handed it over to the boss of the typing pool, who would have a stack of papers in front of her and would hand it out to the girls, always women, in the typing pool to copy type. So you just spent your whole time, as you can see, with your head at one angle, looking at the paper and typing without looking, of course, and then, present it back to her, and she would see whether or not it was good enough and whether or not you had to make changes and stuff like that, because, of course, there was no instant changing. So, of course, what happened to all of these people? You think about, okay, so did the secretaries evolve into executive assistants? Did they evolve into business managers, or did they evolve into virtual assistants? And what happened to that function? And we need to think about that for all of us, is what is happening to our function. As you can see here, especially if you move your chat box, Guinness used to be good for you. There are so many examples of brands that changed their positionings, that changed what they were for and who they were for and how they were used. Obviously, Guinness is one of them. Used to be sold to be good for you. You go online, there are a million fabulous ads about, how doctors recommend it and all that sort of stuff. The same with, you actually see the same with, some cigarettes, in fact. shockingly. And Lucozade started off as a medicinal drink that you bought from the pharmacy, from the chemist, and then turned into a sports drink. So originally it was originally, to try to bring the colour back to the cheeks of your children, because children need energy and this is the best way to get it, etc. So business evolves constantly. We change the context of what we're doing. We change the purpose of what we're doing. And we need to keep abreast of all of that. And we're driven by the context that we live in, by the business that we serve. And according to what the aims of that business are, we need to evolve our positioning to be able to serve it better. Now, I don't know how many people are out there actually reviewing the positioning of their departments on pretty much an annual basis. But it's really worth having a think about, because if your business is doing that, then your role needs to change slightly too. So if your industry or company is altering course, it stands to reason that your role will change too. So the question is, have you consciously changed your department's role in the last 5 years? And if so, how have you changed? And how will it change in the next 5 years? Because you can bet in 5 years' time, your business won't be requiring from you exactly what you're delivering now. So what will that role be? So exciting times if you don't mind change, and perhaps worrying if you do. And that's why we're here, because I've got some ideas as to how you might be able to go about that. So I'd like you to have a think about your department and what it does and who it does it for and how it does it. Because those are the three things that can change. What changes have there been in your industry in the last 15 years? And what changes have there been in your company in the last 15 years? And what about in your function in the last 15 years? Have a think about that. If you're still doing the same, your business is still doing exactly the same, serving the same purpose, doing it in the same way, structured in the same way, then we should assume that things are not going so well. So let's hope that your company has evolved to meet the needs of the changing world. And as a result, you've been able to do so too. So do have a think about how you need to evolve that. Don't just rely on your great levels of skills that you have in whatever your professional industry is. Now, what we're talking about today, positioning, is part of the influence model, which I teach. And which I've developed. There are 4 component parts to the influence model. This is the subject of a different webinar and a talk and several blogs, which you can ask me for. I'll send them through to you if you like. But it starts with the idea of professional relationships. So developing relationships with people so that you can influence them and so that you can be heard and so that you can show them how you can empower them, because business relationships are about empowering other people. If you're going to be influential, you also need to be proactive. Now, that's sometimes easier said than done. I think we can all think of many times when we should have been involved in projects far sooner than we really were, and how we could have done a better job. And when people say, what would you do now? Your first thought is, well, I wouldn't start from here to start with. That's not at all unusual. Now, if you can start to be more proactive, if you can get ahead of the game, if you can have the conversations sooner, then you do have a chance to make a better impact on the project and on the business. And we all know that that's what we really want to do. We want to be we want to make a difference. We want to have a reason why we got up in the morning and went to work. That's not just about being paid. It's just so much more fun. And if you've got proactivity and you've got professional relationships, you've got an alignment there. You've got being in tune with people where they are at the moment, being there at the same time, being in the same headspace. The third one is problem solving. Now, I'm aware that within this audience listening to me now, and also for those people who will be downloading later, we have some people who are in the research industry, and we definitely have some people who are in the legal profession. Now, problem solving is something that for the researchers amongst us many, many years ago was probably not quite as important as it became. And the same is the truth for professions such as the legal department now. We need to develop a mindset of problem solving. The research industry learnt very profoundly that if it didn't solve problems and make that its major activity, then it wasn't going to be able to survive, because the other activities could be outsourced either to countries that were cheaper or to technology that was cheaper. So problem solving was going to be at the core. Now, the legal department is the same situation. There is this absolute love, of course, of objectivity and the law being above all things, and that being part of its strength. But now there's a requirement for those people who are practicing in corporate environments to be able to come up with business solutions. And that's something, to be honest, that I don't think that they're necessarily trained for. But I'm hearing from my clients that they are being required to do so. And that if they don't, they will start to be paid less, there'll be less budget for it, and more of it will be automated. So really important step, and something you have to do very carefully to maintain integrity. I appreciate that. So the fourth one, perhaps not surprisingly, is positioning, and that's what we're here for today. Now, if you have positioning and you have problem solving, you have an authority there. So you know what you're about, you're saying what you're about, and you're acting on it in terms of problem solving. And you're becoming very relevant if you're positioning yourself in the right way and you have the right professional relationships. And all of that leads to a much more influential position, which is where we want to end up. Not in terms of trying to manipulate things in a bad way, but just being able to make the difference that we're paid to make, frankly, and that the business needs us to make. So, positioning. Let's have a look at the results of poor positioning. Now, if you're not positioned right in your business, or even if you're sort of slightly out, and if you haven't revisited it for a while, you might start to see some of these things happening for you. There's a little model here. Quite simply, you know, the impact for on the company, and for the company, the team, about empowerment, and about whatever's underneath my chat box, which I can't find. That's rubbish, isn't it? But most importantly, on the left-hand side here, if you are have poor positioning, you're likely to have poor status in the organisation, because people are not going to see the value that you deliver. Now, budgets go to people and departments which make a difference to the bottom line. So, you know, that's really significant. If you want your budgets to be maintained, or you want them to be able to rise, then being able to increase your status in the organisation is important. And once again, I'm talking about serving. I'm not talking about being important. I'm not talking about ego. I'm talking about having your rightful place, where your set of skills can make the difference it's supposed to make, and where the business needs it to make. So, you know, don't mistake this for ego, because it really isn't. But yeah, low status in the organisation means you're starting to get excluded from things, and your budgets are starting to go down. You're getting exclusion in decision making, particularly strategy decision making. You're not being invited to the meetings that you feel you ought to be invited to. You're getting left out, and you know it's a horrible feeling. It's happened to me, and it's really not nice to realise that things that you thought ought to involve you don't involve you, and you start to find out from some sort of back route. It's really not nice, is it? In terms of the team, we've got stagnation of individuals. So once the individuals are not stretched, all of us here on this webinar, and everybody that I work with, obviously, we're working, you know, we're white collar working professionals, people who like thinking, who like making a difference, who like working out puzzles and being stretched and growing as professionals and as people. And if we're not in this sort of position, we don't get the opportunities that grow individuals intellectually. And more and more and more, every generation that comes up demands it more and more to be able to be stretched, and for work to be able to do that for them. So if you don't have that influence, you can't give that to your team, and you can imagine what happens as a result. You also have lack of control over your team's work. If you're not in a position to say to people, this is how we are, this is how we work, this is the difference that we can make, and people step back and go, you know, you're right, you made a big difference, how do you want to do this? You're ending up with a lack of control. People dumping stuff on you, people dumping perhaps lower quality work on you to do, shorter time frames, people not knowing and eventually not caring how long it takes you to do something, and just demanding information when you know that you could actually provide guidance, but no, you're not able to. So you start to not be able to deliver, and a general lack of control. Your department, your function, your team being driven by people outside it, where really should be you driving it. So all of this risks being irrelevant and having a lack of authority. Now, please don't take it that I'm saying that you're irrelevant, but you can imagine you turn the clock forward a long way just because change happens. If we carry on doing, all of us carry on doing exactly what we're doing now in a position what we're doing now, we will become irrelevant. It's just a fact of life. We'll also have lack of authority, and you know, that's just a terrible position to be in. Cool. So the benefits are what you would imagine. You get status and recognition within the organization, involvement, professional and personal growth for individuals, and autonomy over your team's work. So, you know, this is what you're aiming for. This is how it could be. I don't know if you want to tap into the chat box here, what would be the benefits for you, the way you see it, of a well-delivered positioning in terms of any of these four. What would it mean for you? How would it look? If you want to tap in some answers, that would be brilliant. As I say, there's a bit of a delay, but I'll read them out if you can't already see them. I think you can probably see them anyway. So if anyone wants to say it would look like this if I had more involvement, or I had more autonomy, or if I had, you know, more status and recognition. As if you haven't all gone off to have a cup of tea, watch it later. I'll move on and I'll read them afterwards. Cool. So let's have a look at the two sides of this. Look at the weak positioning and the strong positioning. Weak positioning, you're going to get more boring work. Oh, Francois, don't be afraid. I think that you can see it, that it's frightening to see that you fit the poor positioning profile. Look, I mean, so does everybody who hasn't moved for a while, because the world's just moving faster and faster. You're so not alone. I wouldn't be doing this webinar if you were alone. I'd say that most people are experiencing to some extent. And yeah, Chris, great opportunities. Your other stakeholders would reach out for ideas or input before they have a specific problem. Oh, that would be good before, so you could help craft how it would be. In terms of the response and the solution. Gosh, that's a dream when that happens. You know, we do know it when it happens. But yeah, let's look at how we can get it happening more often. So weak positioning, boring work. And gosh, you know, as I say, I hope there's nobody on this webinar who gets up and goes to work purely for the money. Hopefully we are intellectually stimulated and emotionally rewarded as well. We want challenging work, don't we? Obviously we want the skills to be able to do that. Absolutely, it depends on the leadership, Francois, and their belief in the function. And hopefully, this webinar will hopefully get you started thinking in that direction anyway. Weak positioning, you get a stagnating team. Oh gosh, you know what happens to the stagnating team, and it's awful to come to work in. As somebody said to me once, you just see them dragging themselves in every morning, and it's soul destroying because it's not what you wanted as a leader. Of a team. That's exactly what you didn't want. Yep, absolutely, high turnover, and yes, you only get called in when there's a crisis, and then they micromanage you, and you're overly controlled, and all bad things happen. Look at these bad things happen. You know, you work as others want to, whereas you want greater autonomy. You're taken for granted rather than acknowledged and rewarded, and you're taken advantage of rather than you have clear boundaries over what you will do and what you won't do. Budgets decline. And yes, Francois, here we are, staff churn rather than staff retention. That's absolutely huge if you're running a team. If, like me, you've run teams all your life, losing good people is soul destroying. You really, really need to keep the people that will take your team forward, because each time you lose somebody, not only do you have a gap in your team, you have an unsettled situation in your team, and other people are more likely to leave. You've got to replace them, which is expensive. The whole team is disrupted. People in the team lose confidence in the team when a good person leaves, and they start to question whether or not they ought to be there too. It's just a really bad vicious cycle. Cool. Okay, so positioning. There'll be some of you know very well what this is, and some people don't, and some people would know it but wonder how on earth it can be applied to a department. So what is a positioning? So there's various ways of thinking about this, but the way I think about it for the purposes of this is that it's what people respond to you as being, not something you think and you say you are. And that's really important. So with the influence work that I do, I don't ask you how influential you are. I ask you how influential your stakeholders think you are, because that's how influential you are. And then that becomes a bit of a shock. It's just like a brand. And, you know, a lot of my work in this area comes from my work in brands and converting it into people and departments, with my experience with teams also through growing them. And that is that if you, with a brand, you know, you may say you're something, but that's not your positioning. Your positioning is really what your brand is, what sits in people's heads. So if the people in your head think you're one thing, you know, you're saying you're something else, then actually it's what the people think that is where your positioning really is. What you have is what your desired positioning is, and you need to make sure that you can convince people so that they are responding to you in the way that they would if they believe in the positioning that you have, that you believe. So it's the same thing for this. It's also something you do and something you consistently are, not just something you say you are. So those of us who've got a marketing background know that this is true, and those of us in design, you know, doing design thinking and service design know that you need to represent the brand through the service and through your experience. But we don't necessarily think of it with regard to ourselves, but it's exactly the same. We can go out there and say we're something. If we don't act like we're something and deliver against that, then we're not it, you know, very clearly. It's also a way for people to classify you. Now you think to yourself, oh, I don't want to be classified, but you do. No, you really do. It's just you want to be in charge of that classification. That's, you know, that's the top place for you to be. That's where you get your autonomy from. So yes, you want to be able for them to know exactly when to come to you, how to use you, what to expect from you, how you want to work. You want to be in charge of it. So positioning will help them to do that. You will also differentiate yourself from other departments, so legal from compliance. Now, obviously, companies will know the difference between legal and compliance, but it makes that clearer. It's like, this is our sort of work, and this is where you can expect us to stretch to, and you can't expect them to stretch to there. Something you uniquely, ideally, do best. The utmost service you can be, and it is important. A lot of my work is about delivering service, either to clients or delivering service to the business within an organization. And I see it as a very high calling, if you like, to be of service. It makes us relevant. It's what we're for. That's how businesses run. That's how we should operate within teams, to be of service to each other, to empower each other. To a defined market. So yeah, who are you being, whatever it is, to or for? So usually articulated as a statement of the compelling role you play in the lives of others. So let's have a look at Gillette, for example. I've made these up. On the strapline I haven't, obviously, but the rest I've made up. So just to help you jump from one to the other. So we know the strapline that best a man can get, or best a man can be. So it might be, the positioning might be grooming products which provide the ultimate in male confidence. So you see you've got an emotional component there. And why we exist might be to optimize male confidence across the world, or to get as many men laid as possible across the world, whichever way you want to see it. I always see these ads as sort of buy this, get laid. But yeah, I'm sure that I would never have written that down. So to optimize male confidence across the world is probably closer. The art process, so important. Yes. There are. So years ago, and this is a thing that's happened within the insights area of businesses, is that insights was sort of king in a way. Anything to do with the consumer went through insights department, which is great. But now, design companies came into the scene and started creating design thinking, and they started creating design insights, if you like. And so there are now specific insights for different sorts of things within organizations. And definitely among some of my clients, there is some confusion and a little bit of, what should we say, they're a bit still stuck in the headlights going, what the hell happened? Our budgets got cut. And now there's an awful lot of excitement about this service design that's happening within the business. But what happened to our insights? We still have it, and we do it in a very different way, and we do it in a better way. And we should be really at the core of what the business is doing. So yeah, absolutely. It's really significant for insights right now to show the business why it is that it's relevant and to be more relevant. And one of the things about service design within and customer insights around service development is that they're very exciting. They don't take very long to do. They're very engaging. You know, is there any way in which insights departments can be positioned so as to become more interesting and more engaging? You and your stakeholders need to have the same view of your positioning. That's really significant. So even if you think about, you know, marriage or a partnership, what is the purpose of marriage? So it doesn't bode well if you have one person who thinks the purpose of marriage is to help the other person grow and develop and enrich their environment, and the other person's idea is that marriage is really about providing stability and providing a sense of security and that sort of thing. So if they're both aiming for something else, it's fine, and they're using those things to get there. But if all they have is, actually, I thought our relationship was going to be about this, no, I thought our relationship was going to be about that, then not necessarily a very happy partnership. So it might be worth talking to your partner about what you think your marriage is supposed to be for, and seeing if you can, because that might be a reason why sometimes you fall out. One person thinks they're doing something great for the other person and the other person doesn't appreciate it. It's because they didn't think that's what the marriage was about. Cool. The other sort of example is, are you working for a ferry or a cruise ship? You know, imagine a scenario where you go to work on a ship and you think it's a ferry, and then come the evening, somebody tells you that you're supposed to, you know, change into a sequin jacket and go and sing on the stage. I mean, you're not going to be very happy. So it's really important to get really clear about what you think your department is about, and also that the stakeholders are clear about that. So the stakeholders are not expecting you to sing and dance if you're a ferry, and they're not expecting you to put your overalls on and get, you know, cars on and off the ship if you're actually on a cruise ship. So you've got to be aligned on that sort of thing. So why you're doing what you're doing. Now I won't go into this very much because you can look it all up for yourself, but Simon Sinek is one of the latest golden boys of this, and his whole thing is about people people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And you can look it up on YouTube, and he's got a book, Why, and all that stuff, and he's, you know, very charismatic chap. Puts his case forward very strongly. But I think that is important. In brand planning, it always was important to understand why you were doing what you were doing, and that would really motivate people and get people engaged. So let me give you an example. So if you think about your department, what you're doing, maybe you're providing consumer insights to the business, but why you're doing it, it might be to plant the consumer at the heart of all business decision making. So if I stop there just for a second, what you would do for the two things are actually different. The second may encompass the first, but when you're planting the consumer at the heart of all business decision making, it's very much more hands-on. You're taking responsibility for putting the consumer in decision making into decision making. So you might have to think about how you might do that, which might be very different from how you might do it in the first part, and the sorts of things that you wouldn't do if you're mainly emphasizing planting the consumer at the heart of the business decision making. Likewise, if you're in the legal department, what you're doing, reviewing and refining business decisions to ensure they comply with the law. Look, you could write it anyway, but this is more of a what you're doing. If you're looking about why you're doing it, it might be to harness the law to open up business opportunity. Now that requires a different set of skills maybe, or a stretch of skills. You might need to engage with different people in the business. You might need to do it in a different way. The formats you provide, the way you engage, how you engage, the meetings you go to or don't, your use of media, all those sorts of things, very different. And when you start to move it to why, that's when it starts to come alive. And that's the thing that kind of changes. So let's have a look at how far up up the positioning ladder your department is. Now, I'm hoping that you're not right at the bottom. So right at the bottom will be a very damaging level. You're not clear why you exist and why people use you. Hopefully we're not there. That would be an utter disaster. But also, it would not be very helpful to be ineffective in that you have an implicit positioning. So I assume that I'm doing a traditional role, and I don't really think too much around what it really means. But everybody knows whatever it is means, and so we just do that just like people always have, and we don't really consider it very much. That's not going to cut it. Functional is fine. You've got to know your positioning. You said this is what we do, but it's another thing completely, as with all positioning and all sets of company values and missions and visions and all of those things. If you don't turn it into behaviors, if it doesn't change what you're doing, then all you've done is describe your stagnant position. You need to be able to move it forward, or to either move forward or bring the lens up and start to see what difference you can make. Because what you're really looking for is an empowering position, place for positioning, where your positioning is a driving force. So you are hiring people, training people, evaluating people, rewarding people on delivering against that position. It's the reason that you exist. It's everything that drives what you do. So what I'm going to do here is have a go at doing a little poll. Let's see what happens. You should have on your screen now, it should actually come onto your personal screen. Allow panelists to vote. The problem is, as you can see, my mouse just disappears. Oh, that's not going to work. Okay, so I'll tell you what, why don't you instead write down the number? It's actually written in reverse order here. I mean, the numbers are the same, but we're starting. Number 1 is the bottom position of uncertain. 2 is implicit positioning. So if you like, you reverse them. Number 4 is at the top, but I've got it at the bottom. I should probably write these the other way around. Do you want to give me a number as to where you think your team is positioned at the moment? Number 2, excellent. Thank you very much, Francois. Anybody else from departments who could contribute? We've got a lot of supply side people on at the moment, and a lot of the others I think we're going to listen later. Oh, I can't see a poll. I'd score 4. Excellent. Nothing on the screen. Oh, mate. Okay. What we're going to do then, that's because it doesn't do that. All right, let me just, hang on a minute. I've probably disappeared. Oh no, I haven't disappeared completely. All right. Let me do this again. All right. Nothing on the screen. Thanks, Joe. Good. Still nothing. Yes, isn't it? Hang on. Sorry, la 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 la. There you go. Right. If anybody else is participating, then thanks, Joe. Cool. Okay, so we've got some answers. Joe, any ideas when you've worked? Because I think you've worked internally in companies, haven't you? You've worked at was it the BBC? You've worked at the BBC World Service or something, haven't you? Something fantastic. What was it like there? Give us a number, Joe. Where were you? 3. Cool. Okay. Good. Look, there's always a way to go. See, the thing with all of this stuff, and why people like me need to exist, is because when you're at work, you're working in the business, not working on the business. Fair enough. Not working on the business. So it helps to get somebody external to think about your business from the outside, and help you start to move up ladders like this. So cool. So let's have a look at how to do it. Power of verbs. Verbs are so strong. When you're writing this, make sure it excites you. If it doesn't excite you, it's not going to excite anybody else. If it doesn't excite them, once again, you're not after a description of your everyday activities. You're after something which you would love to be doing and which you can see is within your grasp, and most importantly, is the best service you can provide to the changing business. So the power of verbs. So just imagine, for example, you're writing something and you're going to say, he walked quickly into the room. Yeah, really boring. He rushed into the room. He charged into the room. All of those are far better. So verbs bring things to life. far more than adjectives and adverbs and even nouns do. So try to see what you can do with verbs when you're looking at this. So when you're writing your position, what is that verb? You need it to be active, not passive. Otherwise you can be passive, not active. You want it to be solution, not problem-based. So instead of solving these problems, it's about finding these solutions, if that's what you're about. It needs to be outcome, not process-based, because that's what you do, is the process. Outcome is what you're offering. It needs to be inspiring. Don't be tempted to wordsmith it into oblivion. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to, encompass everything that everybody in the team thought. It needs to be something that's galvanizing. And those things are not multi-detailed. They're really straightforward. Simple words, not jargon. Take the jargon away. It just clouds your clever idea. Let your clever idea breathe. And it needs to be single-minded and not complex. So this is your chance to be a hero. So write it like that, and then see where that takes you. Your next task is to go, okay, so if there was a department that was doing this, what would it do? How would I know it is doing this? What would I see as evidence? So these are some words, that are powerful words. Obviously I won't bother reading them out, but you're looking for words that have a lot of energy behind them to make it exciting. So forget anything that sounds academic or anything that sounds businessy. It's not going to be about that. I want to introduce to you the 1993 Ford Fiesta. Now, I worked on some research for this, and as it was launched, it was considered by Ford to be a beautiful car. Now, I have to say, it now looks much worse than it did at the time, but to be honest, it was never a very beautiful car. And their ad just kept on saying, one of the ads that we researched that didn't work, said, it's a beautiful car. And everyone in the ad just kept turning around and going, oh, wow, what a beautiful, it was a very bad ad, what a beautiful car. Now, needless to say, the ad didn't work. And one of the reasons it didn't work, apart from there wasn't any creativity in it, was that it definitely had to state something which should be blindingly obvious just from looking at it. So when someone is clever, they shouldn't have to tell you that they're clever. They should talk to you and you should know that they're clever. If they have to tell you they're clever, well, they're Donald Trump, aren't they really? And we know that is a very clear, obvious sign that they're not clever. So what I'm saying to you is that whatever you've decided your position or purpose should be, you need to be able to demonstrate it so that even without saying it, people would be able to come back to you and say, what you're really about is this. And you're going, yeah, I'm glad you can see that through the work that we're doing and the difference that we're making, unlike the Ford Fiesta in 1993. For example, she's dressed up as a doctor, but you're not going to let her operate on you, are you? You have to be able to deliver the goods. And you have to go through that work to do that. So delivering a strong position is what you say you are, but it's also what you do and what you don't do. Now, you can't just drop responsibilities when you have that engagement in a company. You have that responsibility. You can't just go, we're suddenly not doing that. But if you can find a way to do that cheaper and faster and not involving your super clever people, then that's absolutely ideal. Or to be able to, over time, be able to devolve it into some other department that's about doing more automated things. So you can keep your department from being dragged down by that sort of automation and just information processing, etc. So it's what you do and don't do and how you do it. So if you think about when you've got your positioning or your purpose and you've stated this wonderful thing, how do you think, if you just read that, how do you think a company or a department which did that would present itself? Would it do everything on video? Would it have 5-minute meetings? Would it have weekend retreats? What would it do? And try to separate it from yourself so that you're not going, oh, I don't do that, or we shouldn't do that. Think first of all about what is the best way to deliver this, if you like, promise that you've made. So I'm going to ask you, how do you, I mean, okay, let's forget about what she looks like, although that actually is, I suppose, significant. But how would you know that she's a management consultant? By what she did and what she didn't do? Can I have some questions? Okay, Chris, sorry to have offended you about your Ford Fiesta. Yeah, you'd ask her. Yeah, okay, cool, great. Is there anything, if you were just observing her, what would she do and what would she not do and how would she do it that demonstrated that she is a management consultant? Listen a lot, ask more, yeah. Yes, she would ask smart questions, she would listen a lot. What else might she do or not do? Book meetings. Yeah, absolutely, Chris. Yeah, exactly. She would charge a lot of money. Yeah, all of these things are the things she would do. So these are behaviors of a person called management consultant. And by doing those things, and I think any of us who've worked probably in legal as well, actually, as well as the researchers amongst us in Insights, people have said, oh my God, how do they charge that amount of money for stuff that we could do ourselves for like a quarter of the price, even though we probably should be charging double the price. Absolutely. And she'd work in the office, she'd spend that time and build those relationships and get really close to the business, and she'd do all those sorts of things. And just by observing that, you'd know that she didn't have to have a label going, I'm a management consultant. She would be behaving like a management consultant. So if you want your stakeholders to believe in your new positioning, you have to act it. You have to act it out. You have to do what that would do. I should write endless back. She probably would, which is written by other people. Exactly. Okay. So we need to act on it. It's something that you do. We work on processes and standards and outputs that deliver it. We deliver training and coaching for any new or evolved skills within our department so that we can deliver it. We work on sharing it and what its implications are with stakeholders so they know how to deal with it. We ask for their input. We'd like to contribute to this. So first of all, they're going to go, oh no, because they don't think that we're relevant. But we can increase our relevance by being given that opportunity and by showing them things, etc. What does it mean for them in terms of how you work together and what they expect from you? So thinking about it objectively, as I say, if and whatever it is department you've got were to say it did whatever it is, what would the company expect of it? How would it behave? Imagine you're writing a movie about the workplace and there was a department who did this thing that you had that purpose. What would you write in there for that department to do in that movie? It's also what you're not. Here's a Labrador. I'm nuts about Labradors. I actually have a black one, but I didn't actually put it in because it's black Labrador. I put it in to say that it's a silhouette. So it's as much by what you don't do as what you do. It is absolutely pointless to tell yourself that you're going to do more of X unless you tell yourself and find a way for yourself to do less of Y. It just won't happen. It's absolutely impossible. And, I've tried it so many times. I'm going to do this, going to do that. There's only so many hours of the day. There's only so much space in your head. So you've got to decide what you're going to do less of and how you're going to achieve that in order for you to move forward and do more of the stuff that you want to do. It's possible, but you have to plan it. So how do you make it strong? You make it higher order. So looking at Simon Sinek's why you do something, you be single-minded, you be powerful, simple. You make it very directive so that it should be clear who you should employ. It should direct everything that you do because it is your best service. It's a statement of your best service to the business's goals. And that's something to be really proud of. So this is a diagnosis and action list. This is something you'll get from the downloads. I just wanted to show it to you and talk you through it. This gives you an opportunity to work through your articulation, internal and external, of your positioning. Where are you now? This is a where are you now, how it's impacting your goals. At the moment, I'd give myself a what out of 4. What would a top score enable you to do? What's the main challenge and what's the first thing you can do to improve? So making a start on improving it and just getting that first action done. Similarly, for it drives what we do out of 4. Is it driving what you do? Is it driving how you do it? And once again, I'm struggling because I can't see my mouse, so I can't get this web thing to close, but whatever it says under the foot, I know you can see it, so whatever it says under there. Cool, so this is something that you'll get. You can plot your scores, you'll see how you go over time, etc. So just a little bit of a recap on what I do. Oh, thank you very much, recruitment and skills. Thank you. Yes, so recruitment and skills, go back as if I knew it all the time. So recruitment and skills. So this is about, have we got the recruitment and skills to be able to, are we recruiting the right people? Are we training the right skills to be able to deliver at this higher level that we want to deliver at? Because I remember, so I was about 25, I think. I was working for a fabulous research company, and the boss, who was a very exciting woman, decided we were all going to be marketing consultants. She didn't think that it was necessary for us to have any training in this. Now, I understand she'd been in the business 25 years and she'd probably picked up an awful lot on marketing. But I've been in the business 4 years and I definitely hadn't. And we just absolutely was so anxious. Now, needless to say, she wasn't able to deliver against this promise of being marketing consultants because she didn't recruit marketing consultants. She didn't train us to be marketing consultants. So, you know, it's important to be able to follow through. Good. Okay, so this is me, and this lovely photograph was taken by the wonderful Chris Meredith. Thank you very much. And my new logo. And so this is what I do. So I help people with companies and teams with collaboration and influence. The core of what I do is about building powerful business relationships. And I focus either, if we're looking externally, so for suppliers, look to me for revenue generation, training, and then inside companies, they look for me for internal, becoming more influential as a team. And I've got a number of actual programs, and they're probably more than this now. In fact, they're definitely more than this now, but around those sorts of areas. So my core belief is that business is people, and that we are working with a business. We're working with so many different cogs of different sorts, and that no one has taught us how to make those cogs fit together and work together to the best effect. And so my aim is to get the businesses working well by oiling your business, understanding how the cogs work and making sure the cogs work best. Because even if we think money drives business, in actual fact, it's people that drive the money. They make the decisions. They decide whether something is going to be a goer or not, whether you're going to get funding, whether you're going to get attention, whether things are going to be moved forward or stopped. So really important. So that's why I start with the people. So the resources you'll get are these. I'm hurrying along because of time. You will get asked just to confirm your email. It means that you won't get everything sent to your junk file. Can you please just check, because it will be with you probably in the next 24 hours. So keep checking your junk folder, and if it turns up there, I think quite a few of you are on our database anyway, so you're probably getting my stuff. But those of you that aren't, please just make sure that you do this so you can get your things. And yeah, thanks for attending. Now, have you got any questions? Anybody got any questions or comments? Okay, good. Thank you, François. That's good. Cool. Oh, that's a good question. How do yeah. Well, Chris, I would say, Chris is asking, are there any tips for finding out how other teams feel you're positioned without seeming awkward? I think a bit of ethnography comes on here. I'd say really, I mean, you can ask them, what sort of work do you think we're suited to and not suited to if you're working as a supplier. You can also, though, just analyze how they're working with you. So, you know, if you are brought in at the last minute, you can presume they don't think that you're hugely influential, sadly, and or of relevance or of service to them, so much so that they are prepared to provide a seat at that table for you sooner rather than later. I think that's fairly significant as to how soon you're brought in. Yeah, what sort of work do you think we're best suited to is, I think, a good one. What would be most useful to you? The thing that's most useful to you is that they, because they can't, that it's not their job to see where your future might be, and they won't know about the skills that you're not properly utilizing for their business or for their work. They won't be able to say, "Oh, I wish you used more of this," because they don't even know you've got it. So why would they mention it? So I think talking to them about the sorts of things you could provide, but I think really importantly, showing them the sort of things that you can provide. Give them some examples, some actually hand over some outputs and say, this is the sort of stuff I could do. I think is important because, you can't really imagine it until it's given, especially if it's not been given before. So finding out those sorts of things and showing them is probably an idea. Cool. Good. Okay. Yeah, of course, absolutely. And also making sure that you get a forum to be able to show the business. Can you do can you do a consumer exhibition, a customer exhibition somehow? Can you create some PR for yourself? Because at the end of the day, all departments are, are fighting over budget and resources, and it's to some extent there is a requirement to do the sorts of things that help you get that. Yeah, if you have a contact with the business who knows about it, yeah, for sure, you can definitely do that. Cool. Okay. Well, in which case, I'll leave it there and wish you a fabulous day. And thank you very much for attending. Those who are attending live, and those of you who are watching afterwards. So that's great. Thank you very much indeed. I shall say cheerio. Cool. Bye bye, everybody.